himself has said the only person on earth who's more Alan Partridge than Alan Partridge is Donald Trump. Can the Minister assure the blossoming creative sector in North North that he values their contributions to our economy, and reassure them and me that the government will do everything it can to protect them from another Trump trade tantrum?
Well, he refers to some of the things I've already spoken about, but I want to ask him why he didn't make his film in Devon, because he's obviously not got the message from his own party colleagues. Look, I mean, there are lots of great British films that will be watched in American movie cinemas over the weeks to come, and I'm absolutely certain that no president is going to want to say, don't watch British films. One of the films that I've enjoyed most over the last few months is Conclave, a phenomenal success and remarkably timely.
Sammy Wilson. Mr. Speaker, the film industry is, of course, important in Northern Ireland because the executive has poured a considerable amount of money into NI Screen, and we have had the very internationally successful Game of Thrones filmed in Northern Ireland, and much of that was filmed in my own constituency, and you can see the benefits. I mean, tens of millions of pounds have been poured in terms of building sets, costume, catering, and even now we still have thousands of tourists every year coming to see where the films went, so there's a long legacy from it. So I welcome the way in which the Minister is dealing with this. It is speculation at the moment, but before it becomes policy, it's important that we get the message over to the administration. And would he ensure that in constructing those arguments, he has consultations with the Northern Ireland Executive to ensure that Northern Ireland's voice is heard in these discussions?
Yes, he makes a good point. I already have had some discussions on other matters relating to the creative industries with members of the Executive in Northern Ireland, and I think I've got another call next week. Of course, I'll make sure. He makes a very good point about tourism. An awful lot of tourists who come to the UK want to see the places where some of their favourite movies and television series were made, and that's one of the things that Visit Britain is capitalising on at the moment with its Starring Great Britain campaign.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I very much enjoy discussing the British film industry because members across the House stands up and say that they've got the Hollywood of Hertfordshire and the Bedfordshire and everywhere else. And I'm blessed in Spelthorne because, of course, I've got Europe's biggest film studios, the second biggest in the world, in Shepperton, second, interestingly, not to Hollywood, but to China. And there is a certain amount of nervousness in Spelthorne as a result of the posting on Truth Social that the Minister has come here to talk about. I agree with him that it's incredibly difficult logistically and technically to unpick the US-UK IP in a film. I think that will prove incredibly difficult. And I therefore commend him for his very sort of considered run at this, and I think it's the right thing to do. I visited Cineco, one of our many British film support companies. They make sets and props. I visited them a couple of weeks ago, and one of the points that they made on the skills is that the apprenticeship sort of model doesn't really work terribly well for industries which have so many freelancers and such lumpy work schedules. So, as a sidebar to his meeting with the industry leaders tomorrow, would he please raise it and discuss it with industry leaders?
Another Lawrence Arabia question.
Well, interestingly, I was at the Bad Wolf Studios in Cardiff last week, and this is one of the things that Jane Tranter was raising with me, and how important it has been for them that they've been able to take on apprentices working in the company because they have a security of knowing a number of projects. They've got their own studios, and it's not they've not just been making Doctor Who; they've been making His Dark Materials, and Industry is being filmed there at the moment. A whole series of different projects that enables them to be able to take people on not just on a daily basis. But one of the things that we need to change is the apprenticeship levy in the UK so that it works better for the film industry, so that they're able to make those long-term commitments to people's future careers.
Joey Frank.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I appreciate the Minister's comments this afternoon. As a member of the Cultural, Media and Sports Select Committee, we have heard over and over again how important the UK tax film credits are for the industry and the tangible difference it is making to filmmakers across the UK. Can the Minister advise what is the government considering increasing or adjusting them in any way to maintain competitiveness with US states and other international markets, given the context that we are now working within?
Well, I've always said that I support these. We first introduced them under a Labour government under Gordon Brown, and then they were continued by the Conservative government, and then we introduced 2 new ones. I think, incidentally, that the independent £15 million movie tax credit will make a significant difference to the UK, in particular at this point. But I note that some of the documents that have been around in relation to the semi-announcement in the United States of America have praised the way we have done things in the UK and want to mirror it in other parts of the world. So I'll take praise wherever I can get it.
Mr. Speaker, I think it still is around the uncertainty of President Trump's comments and the unsettledness that puts in the industry, and especially in Northern Ireland, where we have, the Titanic film studios, Northern Ireland Screen working away. It's already working on A Night of Seven Kingdoms, which is the prequel to the Game of Thrones. So there's a lot of industry, a lot of activity already going. In his meeting tomorrow, could the Minister consider actually including Northern Ireland Screen as well as industry in that, rather than leaving them another week for that engagement?
Very fair point. I'm very happy to do that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I'm deeply proud that St Margaret's in my constituency has been home to Twickenham Film Studios for over 100 years, which has been involved in both production and post-production work for big-name films including The Italian Job, Gandhi, and most recently the Oscar-winning sound production for Top Gun Maverick. But they have been beset by financial challenges, from the US writers' strike to the issues raised by my honourable friend, the member for St Albans, of skyrocketing business rates. So and these potential tariffs could really deal the fatal blow to studios such as Twickenham. So could I urge the Minister, as others have, to work with the Treasury and the Valuation Office on bringing down the rateable value for these film studios? But also, could I invite him to follow in the footsteps of Tom Cruise and come to St Margaret's and visit Twickenham Film Studios?
Minister. The thing is, he does all his own stunts, doesn't he? And I'm a little bit nervous about, being dangled off the back of a helicopter or dumped in a vat of, anyway, whatever. The Shadow Minister says he'll happily arrange. Well, if he'll happily arrange that, I'll invite him to come and see the Rhondda Tunnel, and we can dangle him down a hole as well. Anyway, the point, she's making the point that has been made several times. Tom Cruise is one of the biggest investors in the UK because of all the movies that have been made here, and we're very grateful to him. And the BFI is going to be honouring him next week. I think that is a really good thing. As I say, we are the best place in the world to make movies, and we want to continue that. I'm feeling very left out in not having a studio in my own constituency. But we have produced some of the best actors in the world, including Sir Stanley Baker, who I think one of his great films, you'll know this, Mr. Speaker, was Sodom and Gomorrah. I was thinking more of a different film. What film were you... Anyway, we're not meant to do this, are we, Mr. Speaker? Order. And I'm very proud of a young actor at the moment, Callum Scott Howells, who's doing phenomenally well.
Final episode, Jim Sherman.
Never the final episode, still a wee bit to go yet. Can I thank the Minister very much for his answers and for the energy that he displays on behalf of the sector. Following on from the question to the Business and Trade Minister yesterday about the film industry in Northern Ireland, I had highlighted the £330 million income since 2018. The importance of USA films within this cannot be overstated, with epics such as Blade Runner, say nothing of Game of Thrones and Star Wars, so many using our highly skilled studios and work due to the cost effectiveness of this option. These Trump tariffs, of course, will negate much of the benefit. And what discussions can be had? I'm quite confident of the Minister's response on this, but what discussions can be had to emphasise the need for consideration for our sector, an integral part of this United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland? Thank you.
Minister.
Well, I thought the credits were already rolling, and then he comes up. But look, I feel It may be just that I'm a very optimistic person by nature, but I feel very optimistic about where all of these negotiations will end up. I'm very hopeful that we will end up with some kind of deal. I also passionately believe that wherever that deal ends up, the UK film industry will succeed, because we have always been a great nation at telling stories that people want to watch all around the world. We've got some of the greatest actors. We may be a small nation, but we managed to dominate on screens all around the world because we're talented. We're just talented. And that's talent everybody will still want to keep on buying, whatever the deal may be.
Right, we'll let the front bench change over. We now come to the oral statement. Minister Faulkner.
With permission, Mr. Speaker, I'll make a statement on India and Pakistan. The whole House will have been closely following developments in recent weeks, following the horrific terrorist attack in Pahalgam on the 22nd of April that left 26 tourists dead. Last night, soon after 2100 British Standard Time, Indian forces launched missile strikes against 9 sites in Pakistan and Pakistani-administered Kashmir. The Government of India has described their actions as measured, non-escalatory, proportionate and responsible, and deliberately targeted at terrorist infrastructure. Following India's actions last night, a military spokesperson for Pakistan has stated that 26 Pakistanis have died and 46 were injured, including civilians and children. At a meeting of their National Security Council earlier today, the Pakistani government has stated that it reserves the right to respond in a manner of its choosing. This is an incredibly delicate moment, Mr. Speaker, in an evolving and fast-moving situation. As my right honourable friend, the Prime Minister, noted just now, rising tensions between India and Pakistan are a serious concern. The government has been monitoring the situation closely and staying in close contact with all of the key partners. Since the developments overnight, my right honourable friend, the Foreign Secretary, has been in contact with both the Indian External Affairs Minister, Jaishankar, and the Pakistani Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister, Dar. Our High Commissioners in Delhi and Islamabad have also been in close contact with their hosts, and I met this morning with the Pakistani Finance Minister, Aurangzeb. The Foreign Secretary has also been coordinating closely with other partners, notably the United States and the Gulf. Our consistent message to both India and Pakistan has been to show restraint. They need to engage in dialogue to find a swift diplomatic path forward. The UK has a close and unique relationship with both countries. It is heartbreaking to see civilian lives being lost. If this escalates further, nobody wins. We clearly condemned the horrific terrorist attack last month, the worst such attack in Indian-administered Kashmir for many years. Now we need all sides to focus urgently on the steps needed to restore regional stability and ensure the protection of civilians. The UK will continue to work closely with our international partners in pursuit of short-term de-escalation and longer-term stability. The Foreign Secretary will have a chance to discuss the situation with EU foreign ministers in Warsaw today. He and the whole government will stay in close touch with the governments of India and Pakistan, as well as with those with influence in the region. Mr. Speaker, de-escalation is of the utmost importance, not least given the large numbers of British nationals in the region. The safety of British nationals will always be our priority. Overnight, we have issued factual updates to our travel advice for both India and Pakistan, updating British nationals on military activity and potential disruption to flights in the region. British nationals in both India and Pakistan should stay up to date with our travel advice and follow the advice of the local authorities. I am acutely aware, Mr. Speaker, that for many communities across the UK, and indeed members across this House, this is a very personal and sensitive situation. The British Pakistani and British Indian communities make a huge contribution to this country. We recognise this will be a difficult time for many. We look to all community and faith leaders to spread a message that now is a time for coming together across religious and ethnic differences. Mr. Speaker, we now need to see calm heads. Britain will continue to play our full part for de-escalation and diplomacy, and I commend this statement to the House.
Shadow Foreign Secretary Dave Patel.
Speaker, on the 22nd of April, terrorists brutally killed 26 tourists in Flagnum in a barbaric and savage act of violence. Most victims were killed at point-blank range by gunshots to their heads. My thoughts and prayers were with all those that are affected by this murderous, violent terrorism in Flagnum. This was an act of terrorism, and we must reflect on the fact that Flagnum has joined Mumbai, New Delhi and other places in India that will be forever scarred by an act of terror. Mr. Speaker, this is clearly a precarious moment, and we want to see tensions ease between India and Pakistan. We want to avoid a state-on-state military escalation. We're also clear that India has the right to take reasonable and proportionate steps to defend itself and to dismantle the vile terrorist infrastructure that has caused death and continues to threaten them. And we know that terrorists based in Pakistan threaten India and Western interests. It was the country that Osama bin Laden was hiding in. And because of the long history of violence inflicted by terrorists on India, the UK has in place long-standing security cooperation agreements with India. And in fact, last week in this House, I reminded the government of those long-standing security agreements, why they exist and why they should matter to us here in the UK. Given these links, the UK government should be at the forefront of working with our friends and allies to tackle the terrorist threats that we face collectively. While I know the Minister will not be able to speak about intelligence sharing between UK and India, can he at least confirm whether our intelligence and security services have been in contact with India about the incidents that took place and are supporting their investigations? Has the government provided any specific security assistance to India in the aftermath of the terrorist attack in Kashmir? Could Britain offer specific support that might help avert escalation? Does the Minister agree with the assessment made by India that the Resistance Front, who claim responsibility for the 22nd April attacks, are a front for Pakistan-based terrorist group Lashkar-e-Taiba? Lashkar-e-Taiba are a proscribed terrorist group who have a clear history of committing acts of terror against India and have reported links to Hamas, including reports that Hamas representatives have met with them earlier this year. Can the Minister confirm if the UK government is aware of any cooperation and links between Lashkar-e-Taiba and Hamas? I asked this of the Minister last week and he did not respond, so I'd welcome an answer on this important point today. And does the Minister know which terror groups are currently operating in Pakistan and their links to other terrorist groups that threaten our interests? Last week, the Minister said we are playing our role by trying to ensure that tensions do not escalate. The British government does have a role to play and needs to leverage its influence to help ease tensions. So can the Minister inform the House what are the direct discussions that are taking place between India and Pakistan governments since those attacks 2 weeks ago? Was the UK informed in advance of the actions being undertaken, and does the Minister have a plan to support easing these tensions? The Minister is referring to the Foreign Secretary's calls with counterparts and engagement. Can he give more evidence of those discussions? Have ministers undertaken an assessment of the terrorist infrastructure based in Pakistan? Has the Minister had discussions with the Pakistan government on this matter? And can ministers give assurances that there are sufficient measures in place to ensure that no British aid to Pakistan, either bilaterally or through multilateral sources, has ended up in the wrong hands? With these questions in mind, the diaspora communities here in the UK have strong links to both India and Pakistan, as the Minister has said. So can he give an update on the actions that will be taken to prevent the escalation of tensions impacting on communities in our country? Can he give details of extra consular capacity and support the UK will be given to the High Commissions in both countries and provide consular support to British nationals in Pakistan and India? And finally, will the Minister now be more forthcoming with the House about the government's assessment as to who carried out the terror attack in Kashmir, whether they were working with any other malign actors, and whether he is working through the security implications for the UK?
Mr. Speaker, the Right Honourable Lady asks important questions. And let me take this opportunity to reiterate our condemnation of terrorism in all its forms. Our thoughts are, of course, still with those affected by the despicable acts of the 22nd of April. Our thoughts are with their loved ones and the people of India. The Prime Minister spoke with Prime Minister Modi on the 24th of April, and the Foreign Secretary spoke with his counterpart on the 27th. We are all, as the Right Honourable Lady would expect, in regular contact with our counterparts. As she may know, the Foreign Secretary is travelling at the moment, and I'm not privy to the very latest contacts he has had, but I know that they are ongoing. The Right Honourable Lady asks important questions about community relations in this country. I am, of course, working closely with my MHCLG counterparts who are talking to affected communities across the country, recognising the sensitivities that she points to. And I can confirm to the Right Honourable Lady that I have had extended discussions with my Pakistani counterparts about the terrorist threat within Pakistan and the efforts that need to be taken in order to address it, and that is a terrorist threat which affects Pakistan herself as well, who has, of course, suffered, even in recent months, very significant terrorist attacks.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And the reality is that India's airstrikes in Pakistan and Azad Kashmir have seen the killing and injury of dozens of civilians, including children. And it has led to a massive escalation in the real threat of war between two nuclear powers. This follows 2 weeks of bulldozer tactics and thousands of mass arrests in Kashmir, the unilateral withdrawal from the Indus Treaty effectively threatening collective punishment on millions of Pakistanis, and now this act of aggression, all in complete contradiction of international law. The Minister is right to say that the international community must now focus towards de-escalation and stability. But this cannot be achieved in full without addressing the central issue of Kashmir, an issue close to the hearts of many honourable members in this case, an issue that I have. The plight of the Kashmiris has been raised by me over the last decade in this chamber. So does the Minister accept that the UK has a moral, historical and legal duty and responsibility to end this 80-year period where UN resolutions on Kashmir have frankly sat gathering dust? And will he act so that the sons and daughters of Kashmir have their birthright to self-determination, something promised to them decades ago?
Madam Deputy Speaker, I thank my honourable friends for the question. Of course, there are, and it's well known to this House, a range of wider issues between India and Pakistan, and Kashmir is one of them. But on this most delicate of days, it is important that the House remains focused on the importance of de-escalation, and that is my key message from this dispatch box today.
Spokesperson Callum Miller.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and to the Minister for advance sight of his statement. The terrible terrorist attack last month brought death to 26 civilians and rightly shocked and appalled many. Yesterday's military strikes by India and the subsequent exchange of artillery fire in Kashmir mark a deeply concerning escalation. The prospect of New Delhi and Islamabad engaging in further tit-for-tat military action risks destabilising the entire region and leading to more civilian deaths. Their status as nuclear powers also generates severe global risks. It is vital, therefore, that both governments work to de-escalate the current crisis. Maintaining open lines of communication is key to preventing escalation and enabling a diplomatic off-ramp for both governments. So can the Minister provide more detail on the conversations that he said have taken place overnight with government representatives in New Delhi and in Islamabad, and on what steps the government is taking to help maintain an open dialogue between both governments? Can the Minister also confirm whether additional resources are being provided to support British nationals in Pakistan and India to ensure their safety? Given our shared history, Madam Deputy Speaker, and now as Commonwealth partner to India and Pakistan, the UK has a particular responsibility to support efforts at mediation and to help prevent retaliatory actions which could contribute to more deaths on both sides. Can the Minister describe what plans the Government has to engage international partners at the UN to support mediation efforts? Yesterday's strikes follow a series of escalatory measures taken by India and Pakistan over the past week. In addition to the cessation of military activity, it's vital that these countermeasures are wound back. Can the Minister confirm what, as part of mediation efforts, the Government is doing to press India to reinstate the Indus Water Treaty and Pakistan to reopen its airspace? Indian and Pakistani communities across the UK will be very worried by these new developments, and it is vital that they are fully supported. So in addition to the remarks he's already made, can the Minister provide more detail on what steps the Government is taking across all departments to support communities here in the UK?
Minister Falconer.
I thank the honourable gentleman for his questions. Let me try and take them in turn. I can confirm that the Foreign Office is taking action to ensure that the best possible consular service is available to British nationals in India and Pakistan. He mentions airspace. Even over the course of the last 24 hours, there have been a number of changes in relation to airspace. So I would encourage both members of this House and anybody watching at home to please keep Foreign Office travel advice as the central place for advice. This is a fast-moving situation, and options for air travel may change, and indeed have changed over the last 24 hours. So please do keep updated on that, and I can confirm that my department is taking steps to try and ensure that our call centres are open and that those who are concerned should get in direct touch. We are, as I said earlier, in direct touch with both governments. I was, as I said, with the Pakistani Finance Minister shortly before coming to this House. I won't comment in great detail about the substance of those discussions, other than to say that my key message in those engagements was the same message I just repeated to my colleague, which is now is a time for de-escalation.
Tahir Ali.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. India's record on Kashmir is not something to be proud of. It has been ethnic cleansing Kashmiris for over 78 years. Modi's record on human rights is not forgotten. An individual who once was barred from coming to this country. Kashmir has a history that spans over 4,000 years. It has never been part of India and will never be part of India. That can remain a distant dream of Modi. Does the Minister agree with me that now's the time to de-escalate, but also make sure that the promises of a plebiscite for the Kashmiri people are also delivered, so this issue can be resolved for once and all?
Mr Falconer.
My honourable friend is right to focus on de-escalation. That is my focus this afternoon from the dispatch box. Our position on Kashmir remains unchanged, but it will be the focus must be, for now, ensuring that there is no further threat to regional stability.
Andrew Mitchell.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The Minister has rightly underlined the fact that we are facing an incredibly dangerous moment at this point, but that Britain has a uniquely deep, historic and influential relationship with both these great countries, which we must now deploy with great energy and skill. Does he agree that the government of Pakistan must take more action against these terrorist organisations which operate from their soil, and also understand the outrage that Indian people, but not only Indian people, but including the diaspora in Royal Sutton Coldfield, feel that these dreadful events have taken place, as we have heard today?
Madam Deputy Speaker, I thank the Right Honourable Gentleman for his question, and I recognise his long attention to these issues. As Secretary of State for DFID, he sent a young DFID official to Pakistan in 2010, and I remember his commitment then. He's right that Pakistan has been plagued by a terrorist threat within its own borders. It's a plague which has been of concern to its neighbours, but also most acutely to many Pakistanis, as we've seen devastatingly in recent months. They must do more to seek to tackle that threat, and I've discussed that with Pakistani ministers through the course of my ministerial duties. India is, of course, right to feel outrage at at this terrible attack of the 22nd of April. There are now civilian casualties on both sides, and it is vital that we focus on de-escalation and trying to restore calm and regional stability.
Valerie Vaz.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I thank the Minister for coming to the House so soon? Could he confirm when he last met, or his department last met, with the ambassadors of both India and Pakistan, and will he ensure that the dialogue will continue with them?
Minister.
I can confirm to my honourable friends that the dialogue will continue. Of course, the Prime Minister was in touch with Prime Minister Modi just yesterday, and I was with the Pakistani Finance Minister and indeed the Pakistani High Commissioner in London just an hour or two ago.
Bob Blackman.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Following the terrible terrorist atrocities on the 22nd of April, as the Minister has outlined, clearly India took diplomatic action and further actions to penalise Pakistan. Pakistan then retaliated. But it was made clear at the time by India that either Pakistan removes the terrorist bases along the line of control or India would remove them. And last night, 9 sites were hit. These were terrorist bases where training took place, where terrorists are being trained to go and commit further atrocities in India. So will he now call on Pakistan to make sure those terrorist bases are removed once and for all?
Minister.
Madam Deputy Speaker, the situation remains incredibly delicate and fast-moving, and we have seen rival accounts through the course of the morning about events. We will, of course, track these events very carefully, and I responded to the Right Honourable Member for Sutton Coldfield earlier on the question of the terrorist groups in Pakistan which pose a threat to Pakistan as well as others. We will, of course, continue to monitor events very closely. There's still much that is disputed, but it is absolutely obvious for regional stability to be restored, we need to have direct, urgent contact between India and Pakistan and calm heads prevailing.
Members need to temper the language and not to use statements such as misleading the House. Nasha.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. 26 people have lost their lives in the Balam attack, the terrorist attack, and now 26 people lost their lives in yesterday's attack. The truth remains that there is no evidence presented to anybody to say, any partners, national, international partners, to say that Pakistan was indeed responsible for the attack in Balam. That is not being presented. Does the Minister agree with me, and I thank the Minister for coming so soon to the House and all his efforts in trying to de-escalate, but to actually get de-escalation, then, and if India is so certain, then does he agree with me that India should be sharing that evidence with the world to justify this barbaric attack on killing 26 people and attacking mosques in the middle of the night?
Minister Faulkner.
Madam Deputy Speaker, as I said in the previous answer, there is clearly considerable amount of debate about the facts of what has happened just in the last few hours. I do not wish to focus, and it would indeed be inappropriate for the UK to speculate on those exact facts. We need to focus from this House on de-escalating the risks to regional stability that we see today.
Ayub Khan.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. There's enormous distrust between both nations, which stems from the dispute of Kashmir. Immediately after those terrorist events in India last month, India was quick off the mark to blame Pakistan. And Pakistan, in response, made it plain that they had nothing to do with it. Pakistan's position is, how can terrorists travel 230 kilometres in a devastating terrain, by foot, armed, assassinate people, and then return by foot into Pakistan, in an area which is the most militarised zone on this planet? So it is somewhat incredulous that a blame was put on Pakistan almost virtually within an hour of this atrocity. Will the Minister commit to leveraging our diplomatic influence to encourage an environment conducive to open dialogue? And would he agree with me that there is an ever-growing imperative to normalise relations and address underlying issues for from territorial disputes to acts of violence through peaceful negotiations and mutual understanding.
Minister.
The honourable member is right to finish his remarks focusing on the importance of direct dialogue, which of course I support, and I won't seek to adjudicate from this dispatch box on the competing claims about the facts.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. After the recent terrorist attack, and as tensions on the subcontinent sadly escalate and videos of the destruction circulate, many of my Slough constituents of Indian and Pakistani heritage are extremely worried about the safety of their loved ones as bullets fly and as bombs drop, especially those of Punjabi and Kashmiri heritage, because they have and already have and will be impacted most by the death and injuries to their family and loved ones. So while sending condolences to all affected and recognising the UK's historic ties and responsibilities, can the Minister assure Parliament that our government will be at the forefront of efforts to de-escalate tensions between the two nuclear-armed nations, and that we will ensure that negotiations are enabled to chart a path to peace and prosperity?
Minister.
I can assure my honourable friend that we are very much involved in the efforts to try and encourage de-escalation. And for those with constituents who are either themselves or their family concerned by developments, I would encourage members across the House to point their constituents towards our travel advice, which we will keep updated as and when the situation requires.
French.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The barbaric terrorist attacks in Kashmir on innocent Indian and Nepali tourists caused deep distress in my Old Bexley and Sidcup constituents, which is home to many Indian nationals and also those of Nepali nationality. I welcome the Minister's tone today about de-escalation, and I think he's getting the tone just about right. But can I also urge him to ensure that none of this escalation of tensions in that part of the world happens here in the UK, and ensure that Hindu temples in particular are offered the same funding and security that is given to mosques around the country?
Minister.
I thank the honourable gentleman for his measured and reasonable question. I'll take away the issue that he raises. I've been in regular contact with the Minister for Faith and Communities in the Department for Local Government, and we're discussing these issues closely, recognising the sensitivity in constituencies like the honourable gentleman's and many others that have been mentioned this morning.
Stella Creasy.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The Minister will know that our British constituents with strong links to Kashmir are both horrified by the terrorist attack and also terrified by the escalation of violence that we've seen overnight, as well as the online hatred that is being fomented. 2 weeks ago, I asked the Minister about the possibility of missiles being used in escalation. We've now heard from the Indian Foreign Secretary that they believe that there are further terrorist act plans, and the Pakistani Prime Minister has called last night's events an act of war. He will be aware of the UN Security Council meeting planned for Monday. What words of comfort can he offer our constituents horrified about what will happen in the next couple of days? That this government will not just push for de-escalation, but a long-term solution that guarantees the peace and security of everybody in Kashmir.
Minister.
I thank my honourable friends for the question and for conveying the concerns of her constituents so effectively. Regional stability is in the interests of both India and Pakistan, and indeed the UK, and it will be to those ends that our diplomacy will be focused. As my honourable friend acknowledges, my focus this afternoon is on de-escalation, but of course we're engaged with both governments on the full range of the interests engaged.
Stephen Gethins.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I thank the Minister for his statement. We also condemn the terror attacks, the abhorrent terror attacks, and abhor any loss of civilian life. We do have two nuclear-armed states, though, who are setting up with one another. Can the Minister assure me there's been a diminishing of the international rules-based system? In his approach to this, can he assure me that he will be stressing the importance of that rules-based system when it comes to mediating between these two parties?
Minister.
I can assure the honourable member that the UK remains committed in all of our interactions to emphasising the preeminent importance of international humanitarian law and a rules-based international order.
Paul Wall.
Madam Deputy Speaker. The murder of 26 civilians in Pahalgam was truly horrific, but India's airstrikes have resulted in the deaths of 26 civilians in Pakistan and Azad Kashmir. This cannot be a bizarre, macabre game of tit for tat, where the only people who suffer are civilians on both sides. Can the Minister reassure my Rochdale constituents, many of whom are concerned about family members, that the government is doing everything it can through its consular access and also at diplomatic level to de-escalate the situation, and also to make crystal clear to India that water cannot be used as a weapon of war against the wider people of Pakistan and Kashmir?
My honourable friend is right, of course. Civilians must be protected. For British nationals concerned by developments, I would encourage them to refer to our travel advice. As I said earlier, this is obviously a fast-moving situation, and we will not be in a position to always update our latest advice from this dispatch box, so please, constituents should look there first and foremost for advice from the British government about how to ensure their safety. My honourable friend refers to some of the wider issues that we discussed last week, including the Indus Water Treatment Treaty, which I understand is in abeyance rather than being repealed. Some of these longer-term issues will, of course, need to be discussed. The first priority must be de-escalation.
Simon Hall.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. What role does the Minister envisage the Commonwealth playing to act as an honest broker in discussions between both India and Pakistan? And can he also assure the House that, given the fact that the trade deal with India was signed just yesterday, that there will be a clear demarcation of government response, and that the government doesn't feel in any way fettered as a result of that trade deal in acting as an honest broker between the two countries? It's a very important matter, and I hope he can assure the House on it.
Minister.
Our priority is to ensure direct contact between India and Pakistan, and to ensure that those tensions are directly de-escalated. We're, of course, very proud that we are Commonwealth members with both India and Pakistan, and that Commonwealth membership obviously reflects a deep and unique history between the UK and India, and the UK and Pakistan. We, of course, we welcome the free trade agreement that was announced yesterday. And of course, these are close, deep friendships between both countries involved. We will, in all of our efforts, seek to restore regional stability, and we will do that with both of our friends.
Jas Aswal.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and thank you for your advice on tempering our language in here, because words have consequences. And I thank the Minister for his statement and the Foreign Secretary for all the work that they're doing in the background. Yesterday in this House, we celebrated the end of World War II, and I commended the role of the British Indian troops, now known as India and Pakistan, who fought shoulder to shoulder, shoulder on the wheel, made sure that we won. Allied troops won. World War II was ended. And as someone with Indian heritage, born in India, whose parents were born in Pakistan, I know only too well neither nation will take a backward step. So what can the Minister do to assure me and my residents in Ilford South that we will do everything possible to bring both the superpowers to the negotiating table to restore peace to this volatile part of the world?
Faulkner.
I thank my honourable friend for the sensitive and personal tone that he brings to his remarks. I too have seen the Commonwealth war graves in Pakistan and India, which is a tribute to the service of many from the British Indian forces that fought in World War II. I can assure him and his constituents that we will do everything that we can to play our full diplomatic role.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Given the significant and frightening ramifications of further tensions and instability between these two nuclear-armed neighbours, I agree with the Minister that de-escalation and diplomacy are the absolute priority. Can I ask the Minister to tell the House whether he has sought assurances that UK-manufactured
weapons and military equipment have not been used in attacks against civilians? And can I ask him now to explicitly rule out supplying any UK-made weaponry to either side in a bid to increase pressure on all parties to engage in much-needed dialogue?
Minister.
Madam Deputy Speaker, we have some of the toughest arms export rules in the world, and they will be fully adhered to in this case. I don't intend to make further announcements from the dispatch box about that regime now, but I'm sure in due course I can return to the House to provide a follow update.
Mohammed Yassin.
Madam Deputy Speaker, 10 days ago, this House stood united in condemning the attacks on civilians on both sides of the conflict. Yet since then, the violence has tragically escalated, with more innocent lives lost overnight as a result of Indian attack on civilians in Pakistan and Azad Kashmir. While we all want to see an immediate de-escalation of military action to prevent further loss of lives, does the Minister agree that lasting peace in the region cannot be achieved until the core issue of Kashmir is resolved and the Kashmiri people's right to self-determination under the UN resolution is recognised and upheld?
Madam Deputy Speaker, I recognise my honourable friend's long advocacy on these questions. Today, we are calling for de-escalation, and our position on Kashmir remains unchanged. I'm sure I will return to this House to discuss longer-term issues between India and Pakistan in the fullness of time.
Mark Pritchard.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. May I welcome the Minister's statement. Of course, terrorism, wherever it occurs, should be condemned. But can I, on behalf of my constituents, many of whom are of Pakistani heritage and Indian heritage, join the Minister in calling for a de-escalation and dialogue between India and Pakistan? And ahead of the meeting in New York next week, I just wonder, as a permanent member of the UN Security Council, what more the UK can do to ensure that the United States is fully engaged in that process as well?
Minister.
I thank the honourable gentleman for his tone in his question, and I can confirm that the Foreign Secretary and other members of the government are in direct touch both with other permanent members of the Security Council, including the United States.
Harpreet Powell.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And of course, this is a delicate moment, and it's no one's interest to see further escalation. So, of course, I condemn the loss of civilian life, both with the terror attacks and the military strikes that are ongoing now. But can I join the Honourable Member in saying it's really important that we work with our international allies and partners to try and de-escalate the situation. And I was contacted by a constituent in the region who is concerned about him and his family. So can I ask what role the FCDO is playing with British nationals in the region as well? Thank you.
Minister.
I thank my honourable friend, who's a doughty champion for her constituents. We have been updating travel advice, and I can confirm that my department is taking steps in order to be able to respond as fully as possible to the concerns of our collective constituents who are in the region. I would say to her and all members of the House, Foreign Office travel advice will be the first and best place for constituents right across the country to be looking.
Iqbal Mohammed.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I thank the Minister for his statement, and I associate myself with all the members of the House in the condemnation of the terror attack in Pahalgam and my concern at the military escalation between nuclear-armed neighbours, which has already resulted in the killing of 26 innocent people. I have thousands of both Kashmiri and Indian constituents. I myself am of Indian heritage. And they are absolutely terrified with what they saw last night, and they're being glued to their screens, worrying about their loved ones. The Minister has already explained what the steps the UK is doing at a diplomatic level to de-escalate, but can he provide reassurance to my constituents that whatever steps the UK will take, the diplomatic steps taken will be neutral, impartial, and not favour one country over the other, and will prioritise peace and stability in the region?
I thank the honourable gentleman for his for his question, for his acknowledgement of the importance of de-escalation, and I confirm that we will be prioritising regional stability, the reasonable interests of both country and indeed the UK's interests in the region, which includes stability between the two great friends to this country.
Debbie Abrahams.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And I absolutely wholeheartedly support the Minister in his course for de-escalation. And I would also like to reiterate my condolences to the families who've lost loved ones, both in the attack last month, but in overnight as well. I represent a constituency that is about 20% Pakistani Kashmiri heritage, but I feel for our common humanity, anyone, any religious origin, anybody who's lost a loved one on either side of the line of control, that we should extend our condolences to. But could the Minister confirm, in terms of the international allies that he has been working with around trying to de-escalate tensions, and also on the security issue, given that the UNMAGIP was established back in 1951 and has a huge, extensive intelligence in the region, is he able to say whether he's been in contact with them and what they've said?
Mr Faulkner.
I can confirm, Madam Deputy Speaker, that as well as the direct contact with India and Pakistan and the variety of other nations that I've mentioned over the course of this afternoon, we will continue to be in wide touch, including with colleagues in the Gulf, and I'm due to speak shortly to my Saudi Arabian counterparts as well. As this House would expect, we will be in regular and intense dialogue with all of those with an interest in the region and sharing with them our calls for de-escalation.
Thank you, Madam
Deputy Speaker. Does the Minister agree with me that whether it's the Nile or the Indus or anywhere else, weaponising water is wrong, and that it particularly affects the world's poorest? And does he share my disappointment at the suspension of the 1960 Indus Water Treaty? And does he further share my concern that were India tempted to exploit that suspension, that China might decide to interfere with the headwaters of the Brahmaputra?
Minister.
Madam Deputy Speaker, the Indus River system is of enormous importance both to India and Pakistan, and it is going to be vital that all partners, all actors and international partners work towards its long-term sustainability.
Nushoba Khan.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I thank the Minister for his statement on this deeply concerning matter. Given that he has already highlighted the friendship that this country enjoys with both Pakistan and India, can you provide reassurances that it is in that manner that ongoing conversations with both countries will be conducted? And can you also detail which conversations have already happened or are planned with our international allies to de-escalate the situation in this part of the region?
Sir.
I can confirm to my honourable friend that it will be in that spirit that we conduct our diplomatic efforts. There are many in this House who have alluded to their own family connections, either to India or to Pakistan. As I alluded to earlier, I have lived in Pakistan. It was the first lengthy overseas posting I conducted, and I know that many people right across this House feel our friendship with both India and Pakistan very deeply, and it's in that spirit that we will conduct our work.
Foster.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My heart goes out to the 26 families of the tourists that were killed last month. But my heart also goes out to the 26 civilians and children that were killed in Pakistan last night. I urge the government to do all that it can to de-escalate the situation, and as such, when can the Minister confirm when our Prime Minister will speak to the Indian and Pakistani governments, in particular Prime Minister Modi?
Minister.
The Prime Minister spoke to Prime Minister Modi yesterday. That was before these events. We have been in touch overnight and throughout the day with the Indian government, and I have been in touch throughout the course of the day with the Pakistani government as well.
Surgeon Joseph.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Everyone in this House knows that India has suffered a number of terrorist attacks over the years, including one on the Indian Parliament. Just last month, 26 innocent lives were lost following a devastating act of terrorism in Pahalgam. While India has the right to defend itself and its people, does my honourable friend agree that war is not good for both sides and it is time for de-escalation and for Pakistan to work with India to eradicate terrorism from the region?
Minister?
I agree with my honourable friend. De-escalation is vital, and it's to that end that our efforts are dedicated.
Ben Lane?
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I commend the Minister and indeed the Foreign Secretary for their efforts to maintain dialogue with both countries and in conjunction with international allies to de-escalate the situation. Given the urgency for de-escalation, is there any reason why this matter cannot be taken to the UN Security Council for a more urgent discussion than is currently planned?
Minister?
The agenda of the UN Security Council was agreed in New York, and when we're in a position to update the House on what that agenda looks like, then we will of course do so.
Yasmin Qureshi?
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. May I refer the House to my registered members of interest as the chair of the All Parties Parliamentary Group on Pakistan. Madam Deputy Speaker, in my constituency of Bolton South and Walkton, I have people from Indian heritage, Pakistani heritage, Kashmiri heritage, and they were all absolutely gutted when they heard about the incident that took place 2 weeks ago, and of course what happened last night as well. My condolences to all of those who've died and their families. But India's decision to launch strikes without providing clear evidence of Pakistan's involvement in recent attack is reckless and deeply irresponsible. Pakistan, despite being brutally blamed, has actually suffered more in terms of terrorism in the last 10-15 years than any country in the world. And even in March, there was a terror attack there. But Pakistan has responded very carefully to what's happened. What I would ask, can I ask the Minister that would he urge India to stop escalating tensions and to press for credible evidence and dialogue instead of aggression?
Minister Faulkner?
Madam Deputy Speaker, our focus from the dispatch box is de-escalation and regional stability. My honourable friend, who's got a long commitment to these issues, is right to focus on the damage that the scourge of terrorism has caused Pakistanis as well as others, and that has been the subject of many discussions between me and my Pakistani equivalents. Pakistan herself would most benefit from the eradication of terrorism scourge within her borders.
Adnan Hussain?
Madam Deputy Speaker, every day we witness the collapse of international limits on force, diplomatic norms and humanitarian law. Institutions built by nations after 2 world wars to secure a more peaceful world. Now, with 2 nuclear powers clashing, an escalation that could easily trigger a 3rd world war, I ask the Minister to confirm the UK's unwavering and unconditional commitment to international law, to condemn the Indian state's offensive against its sovereign neighbour, which has claimed the lives of 26 civilians, including children. And finally, I emphasise, I understand members have across the House, but I wish to emphasise the paramount importance and urgency of settling the long-standing issue of Kashmir through multilateral means and under the mediation of international bodies like the UN, so that lasting peace can finally take root in the region.
Minister Faulkner.
Madam Deputy Speaker, as I'm sure will be clear to all members, I'm focused on de-escalation and regional stability, and of course the UK continues to stand by the importance of international humanitarian law and a rules-based international order. International humanitarian law governs the actions of all states towards necessity and proportionality, and we expect all of our friends, and indeed every nation-state, to abide by them.
Jacob Hollier.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I represent a large Pakistani and Kashmiri community in Burton who are watching in horror and fear at the risk of further military escalation. Many have family and extended family in the region and are understandably anxious about their safety and well-being. So can I ask the Minister, what assurances can he offer my constituents that the UK is actively engaging with all international partners to support de-escalation, protect wider regional stability and protect civilian lives.
Minister.
I recognise the concerns that will be felt in my honourable friend's constituency, as they're felt in Lincoln and elsewhere, and I can assure him and the whole House that we will use our full diplomatic weight to try and ensure de-escalation in the region.
Jim Shannon.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I thank the Minister for his statement? On my heart, as in others, is the loss of innocent life, and condolences to go to all of those who grieve today. Just a very salient reminder, Madam Deputy Speaker, in I Baptist Church in Newton Ards, a few weeks ago the pastor told us there were 67 wars in the world, so it totally is a world at war. With news reports this morning that up to 5 Indian Air Force planes may have been shot down, the escalation of this situation is clear and indeed incredibly worrying. Does the Minister believe that we can successfully intervene and negotiate peace? And what assessment has been carried out with regards to the nuclear capacity to ensure global security? Thank you.
Sir.
Madam Deputy Speaker, the honourable gentleman asks important questions. The UK's goal is de-escalation, to try and ensure that we return to regional stability, and the other issues between India and Pakistan, which have been long discussed in this House, are important questions to which we can return. But today, the focus must be on de-escalation.
Final question, Matt Turn.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I thank my right honourable friend for his statement and the sympathy that he has shown to those affected in these tragic events. Residents in my constituency of Watford, which has a large Pakistani and Kashmiri community, are really looking for leadership from the government. They have family and friendship networks that are deeply affected in the areas attacked last night. Now, we all recognise how sensitive and delicate the situation is and the need for calm thinking and dialogue. I wonder, will he outline a little more the actions that the government is taking to help reduce tensions and de-escalate the risk in the situation?
Minister.
I thank my honourable friend for the question and the concern he shows for his constituents in Watford. As I've said, we're in regular touch with all those states with an interest, and indeed with the two parties themselves, and we will continue to be so.
That is the end of the statement, and I'll allow the front benches a few moments to swap over. Point of order, Louis French.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. This morning we learned that Labour's choice of their football regulator, David Cogan, made personal donations to both the Prime Minister and also the Culture Secretary. Shame. We believe that the government's decision not to disclose this when Mr Cogan's appointment was announced constitutes a potential breach of the Governance Code on public appointments and represents a clear discourtesy to both this House and also the DCMS Select Committee. This appointment is clearly cronies over clubs, favours over fans, and brings major risk to English football. Can you please advise me, Madam Deputy Speaker, on the best way to ensure that this House is able to scrutinise such appointments and ensure all rules were followed by the government?
I am grateful to the honourable member for giving notice of his point of order. The Chair is not responsible for public appointments or for the pre-appointment hearing process, but he has put his point on the record, and he might like to raise it with the honourable member for Gosport, who chairs the Culture, Media and Support Committee, who I see is in the chamber as well. OK, we will now continue with the point of order.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The Financial Times reported this morning that the Paymaster General has confirmed the UK is looking to set up a youth mobility scheme with the EU. This is in direct contradiction to the answer that the Minister gave to me in response to a question I asked in this chamber just 13 days ago. He said on that occasion, a youth mobility scheme is not part of our plans. We've always said we will listen to sensible EU proposals, but we will not go back to freedom of movement. This is only the most recent example. He previously told me there would be no plans for a youth mobility scheme on the 5th of December, the 6th of February, the 6th of March in answer to oral questions, on the 21st of January in response to a written question, and on the 29th of January in a Westminster Hall debate. The FT article states that the Minister has confirmed publicly for the first time that Britain is looking at setting up a youth mobility scheme as part of a new strategic partnership with the EU. The Minister can be in no doubt of the keenness of members of this House to be kept up to date on the progress of this issue. So, as such, I ask, why has this announcement been made to the media rather than to members directly? Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker.
The honourable member will be aware that that is not a matter for the Chair. We are not responsible for the statements that government ministers make, but she's put her point on the record, and no doubt the Treasury front benches are listening. We're passing on her concerns. Now we'll move on to the next order of business. Presentation of Bill. Secretary of State Shabana Mahmood.
Victims and Courts Bill.
Second reading what day?
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow. A presentation of Bill Chris Philp.
Immigration and Visas Bill.
Second reading what day?
Friday the 16th of May.
Friday the 16th of May. I now go on to the 10-minute rule motion, Assets of Community Value Support Facilities, and I turn to Emma Foodie.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I beg to move that leave be given to bring in a bill to amend the Localism Act 2011 to provide for automatic designation of sports facilities as assets of community value and for connected purposes. Whether for fun, fitness or friendship, sport plays an important role for many of us. Indeed, if you visit many of the villages and towns across my Cramlington and Killingworth constituency, or indeed towns and villages across the country, and ask a local what they're most proud of in their area, many will point to a local sports team. Whether that's the football team we played for, that we coached, or a family member competed with, or that we follow on journeys from heartbreak to victory. For other parts of the country, it's the same set of extreme emotions, but for local rugby league, rugby union, or cricket clubs, people will move to the other side of the world and will still ferociously support their home team. It's part of our shared identity. Our local sporting facilities, football pitches, swimming pools, leisure centres, are vital for well-being. Whether that's the swimming baths where you teach your kids to swim, or a green space that is clean and safe, these are all things people should have access to in our communities. They aren't just physical infrastructure. They help ensure we stay healthy, both physically and mentally. But more than that, they're places to come together, providing a sense of local pride and belonging. For even the best professional sports people, their journey starts at home. Take Alan Shearer, who played for local boys team Cramlington Juniors on his path to Premier League and international stardom, and become a Newcastle United record goal scorer along the way. Cramlington Juniors has hundreds of children playing at all standards, knowing that they are treading the path of a local legend. And not to be outdone is New Hartley Juniors. New Hartley Juniors has seen 3 of its alumni go on to lift the League Cup. Most recently, of course, was Big Dan Byrne, a literal giant who scored the first goal in Newcastle's League Cup final victory this year. And the thing is, Madam Deputy Speaker, you'll never ever beat Dan Byrne. He's from Blythe. He who cut his teeth playing locally before pushing trolleys at Asda, working his way through the leagues to make his England international debut this year. And whilst today's bill is not to make Dan an asset of community value in his own right, to be very clear, any amendment as such would be supported by me. But the contribution of local sports clubs goes far beyond their role in producing international sports stars, though to be clear, they do. It's more than that. Like Cramlington Town Football Club stepping in during school holidays to ensure that local kids get a day of activity, but also a hot meal. Or Killingworth Juniors, who provide a space for Gaelic football to be played by the local Irish community. West Allotment, who through their fan-owned model provide both value on and off the pitch. Or Bates Cottages Cricket Club, who do walking cricket for those over 50. Concordia Leisure Centre, who take on local SEN children on supported internships. Countless ways sports facilities are making our communities better day in, day out. But in far too many communities, these vital facilities have slowly disappeared. Across the country, hundreds of swimming pools, leisure centres, sports clubs have shut their doors, leaving not just empty buildings or an abandoned pitch. They leave a gap in the lives of local people, forcing them to travel miles away from home to access sports in the next town over, or to simply do without. The disappearance of sporting facilities can be devastating, often leaving scars in places that do not heal. But there is a better way. Community ownership gives people the opportunity to save the local assets that we value the most, bring them into community hands, and run them in the interests of local people. And there are already many community-owned sporting facilities of all kinds, not just managing to survive, but truly thriving, because they're uniquely attuned to the needs and wants of local people. Now, Labour has already committed to introducing a new community right to buy, which will give communities a much better chance at ownership when these assets are available, giving them first right of refusal. But to be eligible for this right, assets need to first be listed as community assets, as assets of community value. And it's an important process, but it's also a complex one. It's inconsistent and it's time-consuming for groups of volunteers. Now, I believe that some assets are so important to local communities that they should be able to bypass this process and instead automatically be designated as assets of community value. And that's why, with the Cooperative Party, I'm campaigning to do just that. Ensuring that sporting facilities are automatically eligible for community ownership so that they can be safeguarded, not just now, but for generations to come. And this doesn't just make the process significantly more straightforward for communities wishing to own their local sporting facilities. It also sends a clear message from government that these assets, which keep people healthy, which provide opportunities and which bring people together, they matter and they are worth protecting. And most fundamentally, community ownership is about ensuring that the assets people and places value can't just be taken away, that communities have all the things they deserve, the things that make them unique. Local places made up of local assets owned by local people. This can be our vision, one that shapes communities that are better, that are stronger, and that truly stand the test of time.
The question is that the honourable member had leave to bring in the bill. As many that appear and say aye? Aye. Of the contrary, no. The ayes have it. The ayes have it. Who will prepare and bring in the bill?
Michael Wheeler, Chris Vince, Sally Jameson, Annalise Midgley, Dame Karen Bradley, Ellie Chowns, Joe Morris, Gareth Snell, Andrew Pakes, Alex Sobel, and myself.
Emma Foodie. Nice straight line.
Assets of Community Value Sports Facilities Bill.
Second reading what day?
Friday the 16th of May.
Friday the 16th of May. I'll just allow the front benches a few moments to swap over. I will now proceed to read the orders of the day.
Data Use and Access Bill Lords, as amended in the Public Bill Committee, to be considered.
Now.
We will begin with Government New Clause 16, with which it will be convenient to consider the other selected new clauses and amendments as listed on the selection paper. I call the Minister to move Government New Clause 16. Minister Chris Bryant.
Madam Deputy Speaker, earlier I appeared as a DCMS Minister and now I appear as a DCIT Minister. And I hate to embarrass the House, but you get two bouts of me today because I'm going to start with the government amendments and then once I've heard the arguments from people advancing other amendments, I'll speak to them later on in the debate. So if I haven't covered some of the subjects, I will get back to them later if I don't cover them in this initial speech. Well, I mean, he's so enticing. I hope he's going to be nicer to me than the chair of the committee was earlier.
I'm sure that the chair of the committee and I will always be nice to the Minister, but I was only going to say that I have experienced the slight schizophrenia which he has referred to in holding two roles in the Department of Science, Innovation and Technology and DCMS at the same time. Although he is appearing as a DCIT Minister this afternoon, can he assure the House that he will not forget his responsibilities as a DCMS Minister for the creative industries?
Well, Madam Deputy Speaker, I model myself in all things on him. apart from the fact that I left the Tory party many, many years ago, and it's about time that he came over here. Look, No, he could come over here. I'm not going back over there. Anyway. No, the point I was going to make was I'm fully cognizant of my duties. I think he's referring to the AI copyright issues that we'll be addressing fairly shortly. And actually, I like the fact that I'm in both departments, because I think it means that I can bring the knowledge of both sectors to bear on each other. And if we're lucky, and if we work hard at it, I hope that I'll be able to persuade him that we can come to a win-win solution. As he knows well, this is not easy. And I think when I had my very first meeting with him after I was appointed in the post, he said, this is not an easy area to resolve. I hope I'm not breaking your confidence, but he's smiling. Madam Deputy Speaker, I was meant to start with, I beg to move that the clause be read a second time. Madam Deputy Speaker, I do have a large number of very different topics to cover, and I'm conscious that many members may think this is the data bill. We're dealing with an awful lot of subjects this afternoon which don't really feel as if they're anything to do with things that were in the original version of the data bill that was brought forward by the honourable gentleman and the previous honourable member and is now before the House. But I hope members will bear with me. I intend to address the government's amendments as follows. First of all, AI and copyright. Secondly, deepfakes. Thirdly, the National Underground Assets Register. And then smart data and other minor and technical amendments. So starting on AI and intellectual property. As members know, it was never the government's intention to legislate on this issue in this bill at all. It is a complex and important issue, which is why we have consulted on a package of measures, and that consultation had over 11,500 responses, which we are still considering. I would point out that I've heard several honourable members have said to me, will you remove the opt-out clause in the bill? I need to make it absolutely clear there is no such opt-out clause in the bill. We never laid one in the bill, so there's not an opt-out clause to remove. As members will also know, the Lords inserted a set of amendments on AI and copyright, which we removed at committee stage, and which reappear on the order paper today as new clauses 2 to 6, tabled by the honourable member for Harpenden and Berkhamsted. A similar measure has been tabled as new clause 14 by my honourable friend for Leeds Central. We oppose all these new clauses today for several reasons. Firstly, they preempt the results of the consultation, and it must surely be better to legislate on this complex subject in the round rather than piecemeal. The amendments are also, I would argue, unworkable. New clause 5, for instance, would make the Information Commissioner the regulator of transparency requirements. But the ICO has neither the skills nor the resources to perform this function. Obviously, transparency requirements without an effective enforcement mechanism are worse than useless, which means the other clauses on transparency are also unworkable in this context. The new clauses also fail to address some of the most important questions in this area. As I say, they effectively legislate piecemeal rather than in the round. Whenever Parliament has done that in the past, it has rued the day, and I think the same is true today. Oh, yes, of course.
But doesn't he understand the urgency when it comes to all of this? Generative AI is currently ingesting our whole creative catalogue as we speak. We need something in place just now. We can't wait for a year for reports or 3 years for legislation. We need action now. Does he not understand that something needs to be brought forward here today, and these amendments offer that?
Well, I don't think they do, because I don't think they work. And you need to legislate in the round, as I say, not piecemeal. But I would also make the point to him that there's a bit of a two-edged sword here, because I've been repeatedly told, and I understand the point, that there's no legal uncertainty as to the copyright status of works that are being scraped. But at the same time, people are saying that they do want legislative change. Now, those two things cannot be true at the same time. I am very determined to get us to a better place on this, as I'll perhaps explain in a couple of moments. But if I just refer to New Clause 2, because I think there's an intention to push this to a vote later on, which I would urge honourable members not to do, but I don't always get my way. On New Clause 2, I mean, it basically says that people should comply with the law. People should comply with the law. I mean, it's a simple fact. People should comply with the law. You can't legislate to tell people that they should comply with the law. The law is the law. And if none of these amendments are carried today, The law will remain as it is today. Copyright law in the UK will be robust and clear. And just for the absolute avoidance of doubt, some people have talked to me about text and data mining exceptions, which, as members will know, exist, for instance, in the European Union. There is a text and data mining exception already in UK law. It was introduced in 2014 via a statutory instrument amending the Copyright and Patent Act of, I think, 1988, in section 29A, as it now is. But that is a text and data mining exception for the sole purpose of research for a non-commercial purpose. I think that is absolutely clear in law, and I don't think it needs any clarifying. Behind me. Oh, yes, of course.
I thank the Minister for giving way, and I understand the point he's making about existing copyright law, but as he has said, the government did open a consultation that has, for many of our constituents who work in the creative industries, prefigured a substantial change in copyright when it comes to AI. So does he see the merit that many of us see in being clear that the principles behind copyright, that our creative constituents should be able to benefit and protect their own works, they benefit from it and protect from it, are what is at stake here? Could he at least commit that that is what this government wants too when he says that the law is standing? Because I think he can understand why people are concerned and where these concerns are coming from that have merited these amendments.
Oh, I completely understand the concerns, and in very large measure I share the concerns, namely that we want to make sure in this very fast changing world that the creative industries in the UK are able to be remunerated for the work that they have produced. We're not in the business of giving away other people's work to a third party for nothing. That would be to sell our birthright for a mess of pottage, to use a term from an old translation of the Bible, and we're determined that we're not going to do that. But as she will know, I have said, and I know several other members have heard me say this many times before, the only circumstance in which we would advance with the package of measures that were included in the consultation is if we were to believe that we were advancing the cause of the creative industries in the UK rather than providing danger or legal peril to them. And that's why some of the things I'm going to say in a moment I think will be of assistance, because we do want to get to a place where it is easier for the creative industries, whether they are a very large business with very deep pockets able to use lawyers, or a very small individual person working in the creative industry, such as an individual photographer or painter, to be able to assert their rights, to protect their rights, to say if they want to, no, you can't scrape my material for large language learning, or you can if you've remunerated me. Now, that remuneration might happen via a collective licensing scheme, or it might happen individually. Either way, we want to get to more licensing rather than less licensing. And as I've said again several times at this dispatch box, we have looked at what has happened in the EU, we've looked at what is happening in the United States of America, and we believe that although the EU said that their package was designed to deliver more licensing, it hasn't led to more licensing. It hasn't led to more remuneration of the creative industries, and we want to avoid that pitfall. Madam Deputy Speaker, as I said, I take the concerns of the creative industries seriously, both as a DCIT Minister and as a DCMS Minister. Of course I do. I agree, we agree, the government agrees that transparency is absolutely key. We want to see more licensing of content. We believe that the UK is a creative content superpower, and we want UK AI companies to flourish on the basis of high-quality data. I make this point in particular because I've spoken to quite a few publishing companies who are UK companies, in particular companies like Francis and Osborne, who are largely an academic publisher. As members will know, the UK is the largest exporter of books in the world. They are deliberately going about trying to get all their material licensed to AI companies for two reasons. One, because they want to be remunerated for the work that they provided. But secondly, just as importantly, they make the point they want AI to come up with good answers. It's a bit like a pipe. If you put dirty water into a pipe, dirty water will come out the other end. If you put good data into AI, good answers will come out of AI. It's a really important part of why we want to make sure that we have strong AI that is based on high-quality data. And a lot of that is premium content from our creative industries. Madam Deputy Speaker, we also agree that the government must keep an open mind and must take full account of the economic evidence. That is why we have tabled new clauses 16 and 17, which set out binding commitments to assess the impacts of any and all proposals and to consider and report on the key areas raised in debate. That includes any and all options that were involved in the consultation that we published after the amendments were tabled in the House of Lords. As it takes forward the commitments made by these amendments, the government will consider all potential policy options. I want to be very clear that the government has not prejudged the outcome of the consultation and takes the need to consider and reflect on the best approach for all parties very seriously. Members will have read New Clause 17, I'm sure, but it requires the government to report on 4 things. Technical solutions that would enable copyright owners to control whether their copyright works can be used to develop AI. If she'll just let me finish this paragraph, because it might read better in Hansard. Access, well, it won't now, because I've added this bit, so it's ruined, isn't it? I might as well give way to her.
This idea of technical solutions is a really important question, but my challenge is, if it is those, I've spoken to some of the big tech companies that are pushing for that and saying that it's hard for them to do it at scale, but yet saying that creators can do it. My challenge is, why can't the tech companies be leading on an opt-in system for creatives? And I would hand that back to the Minister.
The spokesperson of the Liberal Democrat Party, you'll be speaking very shortly as well. Minister.
I know, but she's wonderful, so we'll let her, or you'll let her. Look, it's a really important point, which is that I believe that it cannot be impossible for us to get to a technical solution to this. If somebody can develop AI, and people are now developing AI on their laptops, especially following DeepSeek, you don't need massive compute to be able to do it, then people should be able to develop a very simple system, as I've said before, whereby all creatives who are copyright owners should be able to assert their rights very simply across all platforms without any great exertion of effort. That's what I want to achieve. Now, she's quite right to raise this question. So what are we going to do after this? We say we're going to report on this. Well, if we were to report, it says we'll report in 12 months. If we were to report in 12 months' time that we've done absolutely nothing, I think everybody would rightly rant and rave at us. It is our intention that the Secretary of State for Science, Innovation and Technology and the Secretary of State for Culture, Media and Sport will together be coordinating a special task force specifically to look at how we can facilitate and incentivise and enable the development of these technical solutions. If we can get there, I suspect opt-out will look remarkably like opt-in. The second thing that we're going to report on in 12 months in New Clause 17, Madam Deputy Speaker, is access to data for AI developers to train AI systems in the UK. Thirdly is transparency. And fourthly, measures to facilitate licensing of copyright works for AI training. This publication will be required within 12 months of royal assent and will be laid, of course, before Parliament. New Clause 16, Madam Deputy Speaker, supplements these reports with a full economic impact assessment that will go further than previous assessments and present an analysis of the economic impact of a range of policy options available in this space, supported by the additional evidence that the Government has received in response to its consultation. I would argue that these reporting requirements are important. They mean we will have to engage at pace and in depth with each of these issues, and we will do that. We are determined to find and incentivise technical solutions that support our objectives in this area, and I believe that if we do that, we could be a world leader. I can also confirm that, as I said earlier, that the two Secretaries of State will be convening working groups to tackle each of these issues. Let me be clear. I have heard people say that we are legislating to water down copyright. That is simply not true. If members support the Government's position today, the UK's copyright law will remain precisely as robust tomorrow as it is today. For activities in the UK, people will, in law, only be able to use copyright material if they are permitted and licensed to do so, or where a copyright exception exists, such as the existing copyright exceptions for education, for public libraries, or for non-commercial work. I'll move on, Madam Deputy Speaker, to the issue of purport. I thought that might engender something.
It's a pleasure to serve on the Bill Committee. On the point on timelines within the amendment, the Minister says both would be before the end of the period of 12 months. As other members have mentioned, there is a lot of concern about what may happen. So I would just ask the Minister if he anticipates it will take a year or whether he might be able to work faster so that more reassurance can be given, although I accept there needs to be a thorough consultation and examination of the responses.
Well, obviously there'll be a series of different things that are going to happen. We will have to respond to the consultation at some point. I expect that I'm not telling the Select Committee, but I would guess that the Select Committee would want to do some kind of response to that as well. And in the meantime, we will be doing this working group. I'm very happy to keep the